Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Ignition Time. I hope everyone's doing well. I hope everyone's getting ready for the signing of the $1.9 trillion stimulus package from President Biden, expected sometime in the next 24 hours. In this video, I'm going to share a rather interesting clip of a Fox News host who essentially embarrassed herself on her own show because the economist she was talking to essentially corrected her in real time. In fact, if you take a close look at the economist's face, and I'm talking about the Moody Analytics chief economist Mark Zandi, if you take a close look at his face, he's a little confused with how quickly the Fox anchor is changing the subject and trying to essentially go back to the normal talking points, which is, the $1.9 trillion stimulus package is terrible because of all these reasons, like inflation, which, by the way, we have yet to see. And if we do see, the US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, there she is. Hello, Miss Yellen. She has specifically said that we have the tools to deal with inflation. But let's take a look at the first segment with the Fox News anchor who embarrassed herself on her own show because she was getting contradicted by the chief economist from Moody's Analytics, Mark Zandi, who's a highly respected figure on both the left and the right. Let's take a look at the first clip where essentially, again, the Fox News anchor has her normal talking points, which is, this is a terrible bill, there's a lot of bloat, there's a lot of waste in it. And then the chief economist says that the $1.9 trillion amount is the exact amount to help us get through the economic recovery. He says we are expecting a rip-roaring recovery, and he says that there'll be more jobs, there'll be less unemployment, and we are about to see a strong economy. Let's look at this exchange, and I want you to look at it very carefully and understand exactly what the economist is saying and how he's trying to be polite, but he's essentially saying, hey, the $1.9 trillion amount is the right amount. Let's roll the tape and check out this very interesting segment from Fox News.
Joining me right now is Moody's Analytics chief economist Mark Zandi, and back with us all morning is Joseph Pinion and Heather Zumaraja. Great to see everybody. Thank you so much for being here. And Mark, let me kick this off with you. Your thoughts on where we are with this economy as this market continues to respond to so much stimulus and these rock bottom interest rates?
Yeah, Maria, good morning. I think the economy's set to take off here. It's going to be a rip-roaring year. The pandemic is winding down. We've got $1.9 trillion in fiscal support coming. And we have a lot of pent-up demand in higher-income households with a lot of cash that they've saved up during the pandemic. So you bring all that together, that's a lot of juice. So we're going to see a lot of jobs and much lower unemployment by this time next year. So it's going to be a very strong economy.
Yeah, Mark, you've studied this for so long. Where does this go from here? I mean, you mentioned all of this juice, and you're right. You're talking about $5.3 trillion in new money thrown at this economy in just the last year. So, as part of this $1.9 trillion spending package, the debt is being wiped out in New York, the debt wiped out in San Francisco. I mean, you were talking about an $11 billion hole in New York. That now goes away, given the $350 billion that's going to the states in the $1.9 trillion package. I mean, where does this go? I mean, are we just going to print money? Where does the money come from, Mark? Tell me when this becomes a problem.
Well, I don't think it will, Maria. I think this is exactly the amount of money you'd want to spend to get the economy back to full employment in a short period of time. And if you do the arithmetic and everything roughly sticks to script on the pandemic, this economy will be back to full employment 18, 24 months from now. So, in a time when you have very high unemployment, when interest rates are short-term interest rates at zero, this is the time to be very aggressive in providing that fiscal support. The Federal Reserve has got its foot flat on the accelerator. That's the exact right thing to do. And moreover, it's very important that the support goes to the folks that have gotten hit hardest by the pandemic, generally lower income households. And if you take a look at where the money is going, that's where it's going. So to me, if I were king for the day, would I have done things somewhat differently? Probably. But given the political constraints, I think this landed in a pretty good place and it's going to get the economy back to full employment very quickly.
Now, if you thought that was interesting, wait till you check out the next segment where the Fox News anchor says that the House Minority Leader, Kevin McCarthy, the Republican, is essentially going to contradict everything you're saying. And he did indeed contradict everything that the economist Mark Zandi is saying. Folks, at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, do you believe an economist who looks at the numbers, who looks at the data? More importantly, Do you look at food on the table for your family? Do you look at the ability to pay rent? Do you look at the ability to keep the lights on? Do you look at a check in the mail, money in your bank account, or will you listen to a Fox News anchor, or will you listen to a politician like Kevin McCarthy? There he is. What's up, Kevin? Will you listen to a politician complaining about inflation, complaining about a liberal wish list? Folks, it's your choice what you choose to believe. I found that our beliefs are in many ways tied to our underlying political beliefs as well as how wealthy we are. I find that the wealthier an individual, the more likely they are to worry about inflation, and the more low wage an individual, the more they care about checks in the mail. They care about the bottom line. So folks, you can believe what you want to believe, but in this video, I'm going to highlight essentially the hypocrisy of the comments from the Fox News anchor. In fact, let's take a look at this next segment where the Fox News anchor best says 91% of the bill was on spending not related to the pandemic. And I want you to take a close look at Mark Zandi's facing. That's not true. But before he had a chance to say anything, the Fox News anchor quickly shifts the topic towards inflation. And then Zandi actually emphasizes that most of this is indeed going towards pandemic relief, direct and indirect. Direct meaning towards a vaccine rollout, and indirect meaning towards unemployment benefits, stimulus checks, and other programs that essentially were a direct result of the pandemic. And he says, look, there's going to be some waste. That's fundamentally what he says. And before we get into the segment, I do want to point out one more thing, everyone. In case our viewers and subscribers are thinking, there's a lot of waste in this package. There's a lot of waste. There's a lot of pork in this package. In case that's what you're worrying about, I do want you to know that I agree with you. There is some waste, but there is one place where there's absolutely no waste in a massive $2 trillion government spending bill, and that place is called La La Land. Now, let's take a look at important comments from Mark Zandi as he says this is going towards pandemic relief. Most of this is going towards pandemic relief. And he addresses inflation concerns as the Fox News host rapidly shifts the subject in an effort to drive home her own talking points and essentially embarrassing herself on her own show. Let's roll the tape and hear from Mark Zandi and watch the interaction, and I want you to be the judge. Look at Zandi's facial reactions, and then you'll understand what's going on. Let's roll the tape.
Well, look, we're going to talk with Kevin McCarthy in a little while, the GOP leader, minority leader, and he's likely going to disagree with all that you just said, that this is not the time to put your foot on the gas in things that are not related to COVID. He's made the point many times that only 9% of this is actually directly COVID related. And you look through some of these numbers, you've got $300 million going to the humanities and arts, and you've got $350 billion going to states. So what do you say about that? That pretty much the Democrats are saying, let's not waste a crisis and jam in as much spending as we can. And you say it's not going to ever be a problem. What about $28 trillion in debt?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm sure you can pick off, a thing here or a thing there that you're unsure of, you don't like. But I mean, most of this is going to COVID relief. I mean, unemployment insurance, the stimulus checks, that's going to people that are generally in the bottom half of the income distribution. Again, that's where the unemployed are. That's where the underemployment is. Food assistance, rental assistance for people who have back rent. To help with healthcare premiums for lower income households. So if you add it all, and of course a lot is going for things like vaccination and testing and tracing and just addressing the pandemic itself to make sure that we do bring an end to the pandemic and get to the other side relatively soon. So, yeah, I'm sure you can find things. It's a big bill. I'm sure you can find things that you would question, maybe not.
Yeah. I never say, I'm sure you can find things. You're talking about 91% of it not related to COVID. So when you say, I'm sure you can find, it's not that hard to find things. It's only 9% COVID. So it's really not that hard to find things that are not related to COVID. But in all of this, yields have been spiking recently. I recognize 1.5% in the 10-year is still really low, and it's a good number for those who want to take out mortgages and for those who want to invest elsewhere. And that's where we're seeing this huge rally in stocks. But what about the issue of inflation? Federal Reserve Chairman Jay Powell said last week that the Fed will will not raise rates until employment reaches higher levels. And the ECB this morning left rates unchanged, says that the bank will buy more bonds at a faster pace than recent months. What's your take on where we are with regard to the impact on inflation with yields where they are, Mark?
Well, inflation is going to accelerate, but I view that as a feature, not a bug. I mean, inflation has been undesirably low for 20, 25 years. The Fed's been, every central bank on the planet has been working overtime to try to get inflation up, and to this point without any success. And still today, inflation is well below target. We got yesterday, I'm sure you covered consumer price inflation. The core CPI is 1.3% year over year. That's just about a point below what you want. So we want more inflation. Now, can at some point down the road we get above some things that people feel uncomfortable with, well above the Fed's target? Possibly, but I think that's a very outside risk. I don't think that would be anyone's baseline. And here's the other thing I'd say. We know how to solve that problem. The Federal Reserve and central banks know how to solve the problem of inflation that's undesirably high. What they don't know how to solve is how to get inflation up from where it's been at an undesirably low level. So I'd say bring it on. We're really putting the cart before the horse here. Let's get back to full employment. Let's get inflation back at least close to the Fed's target. And then if we're above target, we know how to get it back down again.
That's it, everyone. Thank you so much for watching a Fox News anchor embarrassing herself on her own show while being corrected in real time on air by an economist. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you. My specialty is that I can make it rain money. Check that out. But jokes aside, I do want to make it rain money for you. Please click like, please subscribe, please enable notifications. My goal is to bring you the truth wherever that might lead us. And my goal is to actually expose the hypocrisy amongst politicians, amongst news networks, and educate you on matters that are important to the country, the economy, as well as your money. Thank you so much. Please click like, please subscribe, please enable notifications. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next episode of Ignition Time. Take care. Bye.